I think it's very amusing that Scott Adams, the Dilbert Scott Adams, got the same ass that Joe Biden does. Like their asses are experiencing quantum entanglement. And because of the audience that Scott Adams has spent, like a decade cultivating, after he was like, all right, I'm not going to try to invent a new food group called the Dill Burrito, which he actually did. It's a thing that he did.
Yeah. It's kind of the spiritual companion to Garfield Eats.
Yeah. An entire Sunday Funnies based diet.
Yeah. I'm having a Dill Burrito with a side of the Garfield pizza.
Yeah, enjoying a Garfuccino.
The only time in my life that both me and Kathy have said ack about the same food and been correct.
Scott Adams, he was like, all right, well, the Dill Burrito is not going to work. Instead, I'm going to be like a kind of, I don't know, fascist hypnotist. He's, because of the audience that has cultivated, now in his response to having Biden ass, he needs to like talk to his followers to be like, stop telling me to take ivermectin, stop telling me to drink juice, stop telling me to take vitamins, stop telling me to do a line of soil. None of this is gonna work.
Yeah, he definitely feels like if John McAfee had agoraphobia, like, because at least John McAfee would have fucked a whale just to see if it cured cancer. You cannot imagine Scott Adams doing that.
Maybe him and Biden should get their asses stitched together like a kind of like backwards human centipede, you know?
Well, that was the idea that I had, was that actually that it's the same cancer and that there's split bifurcated personalities from the same being, that you can become either Scott Adams or Joe Biden.
Yeah.
Scott Adams is like Joe Biden's Venom.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, yeah, exactly. When you put the suit on, you become Dilbert. But the suit is sentient, unfortunately.
Yeah.
The Dilbert mask whispering to me from the closet.
So are we like positing a kind of like microbe or like microbiome? Like this is like the giant aspen tree that lives in Colorado, and it's got different nods that are Scott Adams and Biden.
Yeah.
Well, also, I mean, if you're following the sort of epistemology of the Spider-Man universe, this implies that Dilbert came from a hell dimension, and like when his power reached, was able to take over the Spider-Man, or Scott Adams for this example. Hey, you know what can I say? I did read the Spider-Man comics at one point. You know what? Well, at the end of the day, R.I.P. in advance to Scott Adams' asshole. Probably the only part of him that is, you can actually say, I do feel bad that you've got ass cancer, but I don't feel bad for you, the person.
Yeah, I feel bad for your ass, but not for you. Your ass didn't deserve this.
Yeah, exactly. Your ass didn't have a choice to be Scott Adams' ass.
Yeah, wait, this just sounds like you're hitting on Scott Adams now that he has cancer. It's like, damn, Scott Adams, it's a shame that your ass got cancer because I love it.
Yeah, it's a beautiful ass. I hope they don't have to amputate your ass. It'd be a shame to see it go.
Damn, Scott Adams, I hate to see you go, but I love to watch you leave. We're going to put that on his tombstone. We're going to crowdfund a tombstone for Scott Adams that just says, Scott Adams, we hated to see him go, but we love to watch him leave.
Burying him face down, ass up.
Yeah, he's just, Scott Adams is, for his dying days, he's going to go to Ultra Miami. He's going to be taking pictures, doing like that sort of kneeling pose in the front of a yacht, like looking over his shoulder.
Yeah.
He's going to have like really long black hair and influencer lips.
Or if he goes bald from chemotherapy, he can do body modification to have his skull shaped like Dilbert's.
Oh, yeah. So we're saying he's going to be like he's going to be influencer at Ultra Miami, but wearing the curled up Dilbert tie.
Yeah. When I see Scott Adams' ass, my tie curls up at the end.
That's why Dilbert's tie was curled. Yeah. He could see Scott Adams through the page and was constantly turned on by his juicy, now unfortunately, time bomb of an ass.
Do you think that Dilbert's little crenellated nodules on his head also become erect when he's aroused? Like, is the default state of Dilbert's skull floppy?
Anyway, R.I.P. to Scott Adams. It's very, R.I.P. in advance, I guess, to Scott Adams. It's very funny that you cultivated a fan base that is going to spend your last days on this earth annoying you. Anyway, welcome to TF. That is the Scott Adams update section. It's so weird. It's that both me and November, we both used to read Dilbert as like 10-year-olds.
Oh yeah,
that explains a lot. Okay, all right, getting the lore right.
But why?
Yeah, it's like it's references to things that are completely out of your orbit. It's all just like office culture stuff.
I remember this is almost more of a sort of Glue Factory reminiscence, but it feels like it works here. which is I remember because I'd been reading Dilbert for so long, by the time 9/11 happened, I understood it. I was 11 years old when 9/11 happened, and I understood it in Dilbert terms.
Oh, come on. Like you were made aware of 9/11 because of like a memorial comic with like, but his tie went down because he's sad.
It's more like because it was offices getting attacked, I understood what was happening in terms of like status reports and cubicles.
You knew what Dogbert would have to say about it.
The despotic boss is basically Osama bin Laden.
Anyway, welcome to TF. It's the free episode this week. It is Nate, Milo, and Riley. Your regularly scheduled Husseins and Novembers will be back next episode and then the following episode, respectively. Yeah. But we're here today with I would say one of the most oft requested repeat guests. It's Dr. Eleanor Janega. Dr. J, how you doing today?
Yeah, I'm great. Probably thinking a little bit more about the epistemology of the Spider-Man universe than I'm used to. But you know, happy to be here. Happy to see the lads. Yeah.
That's right.
Eleanor now an official member of the Trash Future medieval court. She gets free mead in the Great Hall. Free premium mead.
Ooh.
And then there's a sort of horrible buffet of
unlimited mutton from the buffet.
Yeah, a horrible buffet of turkey legs.
Yeah.
But it's like they're sort of gray and sad and under a heat lamp, and there's no one attending them, so you don't know how long they've been there.
I like the idea that in all of this sort of medieval plenty in the good times when people weren't starving, the best the Trash Future Lounge can hope for is like a medieval Ponderosa steakhouse.
Yeah, that's right.
Sire, they bring this to you from the farthest flung parts of the earth. It is called the Dill Burrito.
Yes, it was created by artisans in Ceylon. No, it's that you go and then you get like a turkey leg and then you spoon some peas pottage onto your plate. You know, and then you wash it down with some like 1.5% beer, and you're eating that at what, like 4 a.m.
Yeah,
this time of year, absolutely. Yeah.
Other medieval guys were all on the Lucky Saints. Yeah, they're like, you know, there's like Hackney guys are engaging in like medieval guy behavior.
Yeah. I'm training for the medieval Hackney half marathon, which is mostly in a marsh.
Honestly, like it's as good as a regular beer. Like it's actually, I love them. You know, I'm somebody off drinking at the moment.
Yeah, no,
that's the medieval guy.
The medieval guy has that accent. So the medieval guy has the non-rhotic accent that came in the 19th century.
Yeah. You know, I'm doing the half marathon soon.
Oh, that's right.
I'm doing the Middlesex half.
That's right. The non-rhotic R came in like the 18th. Like it's relatively recent for English.
Yeah, that is true. And we think our best guess actually is that Middle English and earlier was a bit more like American Standard English is.
Kevin Costner fucking vindicated in Robin Hood Prince of Thieves. They all talked fucked up. He talked normal.
It's true. You know,
Andrew Tate is actually what they all sounded like.
That's actually not a bad. We can't just go back into Tate voice every time.
Listen, Robin Hood, I don't care about you and your merry men.
Yeah. So if you're going to do an impression of a medieval English person, maybe you should use my voice. That's all I'm saying.
Also, just for the record, since I'm rarely on episodes, I am a different person than Riley.
Wow.
I realize that sometimes this has to be stipulated. Riley, Canadian. Me, not Canadian.
Yeah.
There are some slight differences, a few things here and there that will let you tell us apart.
Yeah. They're like,
Just
why is
FYI.
Nate talking about wine again?
God, I wish Nate would shut up about goddamn hauntology. Killing me, man.
We're going to talk a little bit about some news. And then, Eleanor, you've got some stuff coming out in the next few weeks about the use and misuse of the Crusades and among the sort of modern far right. And we're going to talk about that after the news.
Yay.
Oh, yeah, that's a thumbs up for this audio medium.
Listen, you know, I'm like, hell yeah, brother. We're absolutely going to get into it. I've been spending way too much time thinking about the Crusades with the good homies over at American Prestige. And it is an incredible time to be alive in this time of right-wing nationalist resurgence. Because these people are just talking about the Crusades constantly. And it's very, very funny that they wish to die of dysentery in Syria so badly. But, we'll get into that later. But unfortunately, I'm poisoned because I've had to think too much about the Crusades and I'm making it everybody else's problem. So, yeah.
I think J.D. Vance should do a children's crusade where he and all of his friends just like get on a ship and then vanish.
Yeah.
And then just they get on a ship, disappear, and then their next scene changed to an oar, a Barbary pirate ship.
It's the biggest problem with the English crusade inside. You get so many promising under 21 crusaders, and then they just, they do too much too young. They get injured, and they just never make it at the top level.
They end up chained to an oar.
Yeah, you never see him beheading any Saracens at the top level, and it's a shame.
Yeah, I'm really excited for the Eastern Mediterranean derby where the French team is going to take on the Byzantines now that they're owned by the Venetians.
I actually really prefer the Lady Crusade. I think it's actually better to watch.
I mean, all I can say about this is I imagine I'm mixing metaphors here, but a children's crusade led by J.D. Vance is going to be like a version of the Pied Piper of Hamelin, where the Pied Piper has zero charisma and no children follow him. It's exactly weird. He just looks. There's something wrong with that guy. Rizless.
Yeah,
he's bad with the pipe.
Yeah.
He's the Pied Piper who like keeps saying, "Oh fuck, wait," every 3 notes.
Yeah. He's doing like 3 blind mice, but very hesitantly.
Yeah, he's like, "Oh fuck, sorry, oh fuck, sorry."
I gotta say, Catholic converts and you say children's crusade. I know it's something that we made up right now, but I'm just cringing out of my fucking skin. So I don't trust it. I don't trust it. That's all.
It's terrible. Well, we're gonna get to that. First, a little bit of news, a little bit of UK news. Which is
that's always good.
Yeah.
Ooh, I live there.
Yeah. Don't most of us. Well, it seems like the Labour Party is deciding to panic.
No.
Again.
Yes.
At the disco or
no, the whole country.
Okay.
Including but not limited to the discos. So basically, what seems to be happening is that the Labour Party leadership is now saying, "Shit, we made everybody hate us by trying to outflank reform to the right."
Yeah.
So they are now
just not much room to squeeze around them on the right, And it's quite a narrow gap there.
Yeah, and basically giving ourselves a bunch of sort of impossible labors, right?
That's the new. We've had like blue labor, and the next one's going to be impossible labor.
Yeah, they're going to be clearing out the Hyperion stables at any moment.
Yes.
It's going to be great. Yeah.
Well, they're slaying lions, hydras, etc. So the chasing the reform to the right might not be a great electoral strategy. Someone somewhere finally, did like a dodge roll past Morgan McSweeney so they could say to Keir Starmer, things are not going well. And most of the people joining reform, most of the people going to vote reform are leaving the Tories. Very few of them are leaving us. Our people are going to the Lib Dems or more likely staying home.
Yeah.
And so now what's happened is, number one, it's very amusing that everything being briefed to the press is that Morgan McSweeney, a hired advisor, not elected.
Can't stress that much.
Easily fireable in theory, is blocking the reversal of the 2-child benefit cap and the winter fuel allowance cut.
Hell yeah.
Right.
I don't know how he's doing that.
Yeah, he has no political power.
Yeah, unless he has photos of exactly what Starmer was doing in Lord Ali's penthouse. I don't know how Morgan McSweeney, a hireable and fireable advisor, is able to meaningfully block things.
We need to stop losing voters to the Lib Dems, and that's why I am committing right now to going on a helter-skelter, going down, chasing the wheel of cheese down the hill. These are all things that I'm going to do to prove that I can be as good as the Lib Dems.
We're going to make Labour the party of, neither left nor right, but whimsical.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. Any case, it seems like in a huge panic, they're briefing to the press about rolling these things back. And at the time of recording, they are still considering how to reverse the 2-child benefit cap, but it's back being talked to in the press. Lord knows if they'll continue it. But basically the statements they're making are, we're going to do something about child poverty. And this is basically all you could possibly do. It's also relatively recent policy. It was brought in by Osborne. And then considering how to reverse the winter fuel allowance cut. Now, here's the thing. All of these things are good to do, but it's very easy to remember that I was the same age that I am now when Starmer whipped the entire party to vote to cut winter fuel allowance, a few months ago.
Yeah.
Yeah. Imagine.
We're old enough to remember it because it was very recently.
It was super recent.
Yeah, there are actually babies that are old enough to remember it.
Yeah, exactly. all of the kids that were born on this show, all of the kids that were born to people who are hosts of this show are older than the policy to cut the winter fuel allowance that Starmer whipped Labour MPs to vote for.
I don't know, maybe the idea here is that enough Nans have died. They're like, yeah, we just needed to get rid of those ones specifically. Now we can cover it again because enough of them are dead. It'll be fine.
It's a test of the emergency broadcast system. We had to make sure it worked. It's like, does the kill your Nan button work? Okay, it's working. All right, we can turn it off now.
Yeah. Wait, Matt Hancock had used it quite a lot, but we need to make sure it works when we press it as well.
Yeah. Well, Matt Hancock had outside help.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah. That's true. That's true. Yeah.
So this is what's happening, and I look at that, right, and I remember also in like less than a year ago, not only did he whip Labour MPs to vote to cut winter fuel allowance, it was the thing that lost them the most votes at local elections, and then he withdrew the whip from 7 MPs, like people like Zara Sultana for doing that, and now it's like joking. Psych.
Well, I mean, like, to be fair to Morgan McSweeney, which I don't think we need to be at all, right? I mean, if we take his ideology seriously, the trouble with reversing these policies, which they absolutely should do, to be clear, is that, well, then how come there's no money for anything else? Like, if the idea was that, no, you can't have any of this because, you know, the incredible real forces of the market mean that there is no money to keep your Nan and also these babies alive, then why is there now? Right. And if there's money for this, then why isn't there money for the NHS? And why isn't there money for anything? And, you know, the answer is, of course, that there is money for all of this. But if your ideology says that we have to keep doing what it is that we're doing, then there is no real way to back out of this.
And, but also, what I go back to is imagine just having campaigned on these things. Imagine if you had gone into the local elections campaigning on, or not going to the local elections, you would have done it already. But imagine having campaigned on removing the 2-child benefit cap, which is like, I remember, you know, the 10 pledges. I don't know if anyone else does. But imagine campaigning on removing that. Imagine creating a constituency for it, telling people if you have kids and like, you know, if you have kids, so basically already this is dangerous because they're not going after the votes of dead people. They're going after the votes of people with young children, which is like, that's woke.
Well, we've got to kill more Nans so they'll vote for us once they're dead.
Yeah, that's right.
So they'll be in our core demographic.
Yeah. So, but still, right? Like imagine having that in your corner, that thing you've done for people. And imagine, could you imagine actually making the case for economic justice and showing leadership in doing so rather than being dragged, kicking and screaming by polling into doing so reluctantly and with half measures and briefing, maybe we will, maybe we won't. I see you hated that. I'm sorry. Do you like us now?
I told you last week, no, I can't imagine that. We only know one way of doing it.
Well, it's just the idea that I think at the risk of bringing up a familiar topic, it feels like anytime this comes up, there's always the specter of Morgan McSweeney overturning the barbecue grill and saying this whole thing smacks of Corbyn. But the problem is that, like, these are policies, these are incredibly unpopular decisions. And it does feel like Labour in its current incarnation, its leadership's response is that any criticism that it faces from any of its its voters, people affected by its policies, it basically is like that student politics and we can just have a bunch of bald guys say way at you in local council meetings in order to intimidate you. And it's like, well, no, these people do get to vote. They don't have to be members of the Labour Party to vote in the fucking national election. And they're always stunned, befuddled, flabbergasted when people don't vote for them. When it's like, well, yeah, you're a dick to everyone. And you're like, I'm going to do shit that harms you. And then you do. And then you're like, but you're still supposed to vote for me. It's like I genuinely believe there is at least some grain of truth to this idea that they are so internally fixated on discipline and banishing the left from within the Labour Party that they keep forgetting about the election that then comes after you have, you know, salted the earth within the party. That regular people who don't give a fuck about any of the briefcase shit, they have a option to vote for you or someone else or not vote at all.
And I guess I'm always frustrated because, you know, I'm Schrodinger's leftist here, right? And I'm literally one of the people that they tried to get rid of, and it worked. I left the party, right? And I was doing the thing that everyone says, well, what you should do is get involved in the party at the local level. And like, I was doing that. I was showing up to meetings on Thursday nights and pulling my hair out. They got very mad that my particular branch of the like little local branch was incredibly lefty. So they forcibly joined us with with another more centrist group nearby to dilute us and like put more centrists in. If they were losing votes or they saw that there were more lefties in the meeting, they would terminate the meeting and kick us all out and be like, no, we're not having the vote tonight. Like they did every single thing they could to screw us over. And I was like, okay, well, that's it. When they called us fleas, that the dog was shaking off, I was like, okay, yeah, all right, I'm leaving, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Eleanor's left the party. She's joined Reform.
Exactly.
Keir Starmer, will you be racist enough to win her back? We're throwing down the gauntlet.
And it's like, then they changed the boundaries. Now my MP is Ellie Reeves' sister, which is going great. And like, she didn't even bother like coming around to our neighborhood and saying, hey, by the way, I'm going to be your MP now, because we're just captive as far as they're concerned. They're like, you are Labour voters. That is what you are. And then you see them be like, well, wait a minute. What do you mean you've wandered off? Like, which is what most people are going to do. There are a lot of debates to be had about whether we're going to do Green Party entryism or what it is that is going to be next. But I think a lot of these people who are really involved are just not going to vote. And so we're either losing elections because we did something too woke and it makes people not vote, or we've cost people the election by not voting. And it's like, well, am I powerful or not? Right? Like, that's what I don't understand, because if I'm powerful, you would think that they could just, not starve babies, or something like that, which is, I'm asking for very little here. I'm used to being disappointed electorally, right? I'm an elder millennial. The first election I ever voted in was the one that George W. Bush stole. Like, right? I'm like, my standards are through the fucking floor, right? And all I am asking is for a modicum of don't starve kids. And these people are like, absolutely not.
Well, and even then, to be clear, Labour is just now briefing that, maybe we're going to do this. And surely now, again, it's the product of a lot of internal party wrangling as to what's going to happen at the next fiscal event. They're definitely going to do some kind of U-turn on winter fuel allowance. But again, this is because people who are interested in not dying or not having children starve or not having old people free, like just be pension or in poverty, basically. People are actually concerned about that, which is fuck tons of people, are being told you are fleas, fuck off. And then guess what? An election happened and they fucked off. And now they're panicking. And it's like, if they had just been in touch with reality, they would have, even if they are the same kind of cynical people that they are, right? They would have understood that this was at least likely to happen and they wouldn't have been surprised, which they clearly were.
It's interesting because I think that, when you see like liberals in the wild, when they talk about them, like right around the election, they all felt as though they were like receiving direct brain waves from Keir Starmer. And they were like, I secretly know what he's going to do. And I know he's saying all this terrible right wing shit, but actually, we're going to rejoin the EU and something is going to happen, right? And it's like, okay, yeah, dope, cool. But they've disappointed those people too, which is, the people who actually will show up and vote and kind of do think this is like a team sport and it's red versus
they're all voting
blue.
Lib Dems now.
Exactly. And like, they simply love to pay 5p for a grocery bag. Like that's the sort of shit that these people are into. So like, I don't know.
The helter-skelter of history is long, but it bends towards Ed Davey as Prime Minister somehow.
Yeah, and the thing is, this is that because Nigel Farage is allowed to occupy the position within British politics that he is, which is no one at the BBC or the Guardian or whatever, no one thinks that like Reform is a real party. They still think it's like an outside challenger party, not the likely next government. He's now allowed to just say, oh, us too, we also would scrap the 2-child benefit. We also are going to like restore winter fuel allowance, but we're also going to like cut taxes to their lowest and we're going to do all this stuff. And again, it's like, okay, well, Keir, Labour Party, these are such small claims, right? These are small things that like they're big in terms of the effect on people's lives, but in terms of like making living here better, it's not such a big step. It's going back to where we were 10 years ago. And again, they're not going to learn this because again, they're being dragged kicking and screaming into this. They're not going to, who knows if they'll get dragged kicking and screaming further. What they are is like, twitchy and reactive and tetchy. Like they've always been this way, even personally, right? Like these people melt down at the slightest criticism, which is what we've seen time and again since 2020. And this is just another version of that. And guess what? You're getting outflanked because you're not showing leadership. You're not showing leadership.
But also I'd say too that in the end, even if they did wind up both reversing the cuts and also scrapping the 2-child limit, they won't get any credit for it. Both, part of that is endemic, I think, because of the media in Britain, but also some of it is because they are so unconvincing and had to be dragged and were such dickheads and seem so indecisive that in general, the impression people will retain is that like, regardless of whether or not they got a good thing or an improved thing in their lives, it's basically going to be, fuck those guys. like everything about them just exudes negative charisma. I hate to say that or use that word like it's like some kind of James Carville shit, but genuinely, like the impression that people come away, even if they suddenly turned around and decided they were going to do just like ultra Corbynism overnight, people would still find them slimy and untrustworthy because they would be just using their eyes and their ears. Everything about them seems so insincere. And also the idea that you have to be convinced, or that, I don't know, that like you went along with it in the first place out of, I don't know what kind of like fucking ideological reasons, because quite frankly, a tiny fraction of people are gonna be like, right, we need to cut the state and cut excess spending on old people not freezing to death. Most people are going to find out about this when they suddenly don't get the money that they're used to getting.
Yeah.
And it's like, you're just gonna, it's just gonna come across as vindictive and shitty and like not responsible, just mean, and people are going to remember it. And so it's like the damage is already done. And I don't know, like at a certain point you stop even being like, who's advising these people, because they all kind of exist in their weird sealed ecosystem. And they think the next Thatcherite right-wing turn is going to win them the support of everyone in Britain. It's like, how is that going, guys? How is that going in this practically half-century-long project you guys have been on? How is that going for you?
I'll tell you how it's going, is that Reform is currently rooting through like the bins and the cupboards in Durham Council trying to find the secret woke button that will like remove all the flags.
Yeah, exactly.
Anyway.
All there is the kill Nans button.
Speaking of the bins, I'm speaking of the bins. I want to move on to one thing.
A reverent hush comes over.
A reverent hush falls over the room.
A minute's silence for the bins, please, sir.
It's bins, and then we're going to talk Crusades. Yeah, bins first, Crusades later. That's what Richard II said.
I got to throw something in before you go, Riley. Yeah. What if they had like a Serco-style outsourcing in Durham for waste pickup, and the bins collection company was some local company, but their name was an acronym, and it was DEI?
Oh.
Can you fucking imagine? Can you imagine, man? It would be the British singularity.
Oh, no, Richard II was not a Crusader. Sorry, everybody. Apologies. I was mistaken for a different Richard.
Pull your head out of your ass, all right, Riley? Like right in front of me.
No,
Damn.
That's what he did. Yeah. That's what it was. He got stuck with the bins, so he didn't go crusading.
Exactly.
Yeah, he was focused on domestic policy.
He was doing his part for society. You know, he knew what was more important.
That's what it was. Is the serfs party would knock on your door, and then you'd be like, "Well, I care about what we're doing in the Holy Land," and then they'd be like, "Why do you care about what's going on in the Holy Land when we're not taking care of the bins at home?"
Do you know what? I'm sorry. I'm voting serf. I'm like so true, bestie.
Yeah.
There's buckets of gong building up in a sort of mud path outside me hut.
Yeah.
You know, and the Lord of the Manor's not interested. He's busy with the Holy Land. But what about why don't we look after our own first? All right.
The town crier has this news scandal that, you know, Sir Keir Starmer, saying this in Middle English name version, does not in fact say Gardy Lou when he chucks the bucket of slop out of his window. You know what? He doesn't care at all about his fellow man.
Oh, hold on. I'll tell you what happened. He didn't say Gardy Lou when he chucked the bucket of slop outside his window, and then it hit a guy who was distributing bread from a donkey.
Exactly. Yeah. The bread delivery, the on-call bread delivery service.
That's the problem. Is children don't even want to crusade anymore. I think they should bring back national service.
Well, first we have to come up with a concept of a nation which kind of requires printing technology.
Never seen a pamphlet. Don't know what it is.
Yeah. What you mean, nation? I'm tied to the land of me lord.
Back to the Future medieval period where Marty McFly's handing out pamphlets. It's like, maybe you guys aren't ready for that.
He's traveling back from like 1580 to like 1230.
Hey, it's your cousin Marvin Gutenberg. You know that new press you've been looking for?
Oh, perfect. This is going to be for England. What's that? What is that? Yeah. All right. Look, we got to get to the bins, and then we're going to get to the history. That's the thing. I think people might sort of slowly realize that this is a podcast about lots of things, but at base, it is a history show.
That's right.
Because that's all I ever want to talk about.
Well, it's hard saying, but also when you really think about it, it's all history. Damn.
That's fucking right. All right. Bins update. Look, yes, I've been sent, by the way, the article about Airbnb 1 trillion times, which we're going to talk about either the next episode or next week. But this felt like I wanted to tell Milo about it.
Okay, all right.
So you know how the Labour right, which is the
Labour Party,
Labour Party, but specifically like that faction, loves jail.
Oh yeah.
They're crazy about jail, and everyone basically since Blair, like late Blair, has been crazy about jail. They're like, build jails, more jails. We're going to send more people to jail. Just need to jail more people. We're going to dissuade people from committing crimes with jail. We're going to make jail nice. We're going to make jail bad. We're not going to fund any of it. So it's going to be incredibly more dangerous to be there than like even just the basic sort of premise of the carceral state, blah, 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 right? We all know that. Well, basically, some of those internal contradictions have come home. Can a contradiction come home to roost? The contradictions have come home to roost in a mixed metaphor.
Yeah,
and
I like that.
Thank you. And what has happened is that the great lovers of jail, but the great haters of spending money on anything, have run out of jail.
Oh no, the chickens have been heightened.
Yes, thank you, Matt. The chickens are heightened to never before seen.
Yeah. Well, it's the chickens inherent to the capitalist system.
The chickens have been placed upon the rack and stretched until they recant their faith.
Turning them into a sort of Milanese.
Yeah, that's how you're going to make you into a medieval schnitzel. That's what they call it. Yeah. Oh, no, that's what it is. We're going to give you the old Aragon schnitzel. No. Anyway, they ran out of jail.
Oh fuck.
Yeah. So now it's one of those things where there's like, oh yeah, if we jail one more person, it's going to be like Mr. Creosote and the whole system's going to burst. Right. There's no more space in any of the jails.
Someone's going to like pop out the top if we put another person in the bottom.
Yeah. They go to jail in Toontown from Roger Rabbit.
Yeah. But Bronson's going to be accidentally released if we put one more guy in jail.
He's going to start beating up everybody in the country.
Yeah. He's going to grease himself up and start a fight with everyone.
He's going to go door to door in Britain and just start punching whoever answers.
Honestly, he would win if he ran for election. Like if he was just like naked, greased up, and he's like, "I'll fucking fight everyone. Everyone's a fanny now." Like people would be like, "Yeah, I'm voting for him." I'll tell you what, Bronson, he speaks his mind. You know,
MP for Rochester, almost assuredly. I'm telling you right now.
Maybe that's who the Labour Party should make. They should make him a lord, and then he should lead the Labour Party. Charlie Bronson. So anyway, they ran out of jail. So Justice Secretary Shabana Mahmood says she wants to have a new and innovative way of punishing offenders, which is
the rack.
To be broken upon the wheel.
Yeah, the Iron Maiden. Scold's girdle, whatever it is, Scold's bridle.
No, she is understood to want probation teams to work with councils so that local authorities are able to assign council jobs unpaid to offenders.
Oh, slavery.
Cool.
Corvée.
Nice.
Yeah, we're bringing back Corvée.
We're bringing it back. Oh, fantastic. No, I love this. Yeah.
The example they gave was because, again, Shabana Mahmood, writing for The Telegraph, obviously, said she's a card-carrying member of the party's Law and Order wing.
I didn't know they had cards. Okay.
And that what she said, basically, is what we're going to do is we're going to have, like, people who are not on custodial sentences. So the general guidance right now is if you're going to be sentenced to less than a year in jail, is they should figure out something else because there's just no space.
So they basically want to force you to do community service, but like actual council work that usually you would be employed by a private company to do. Then they would donate your wages to like a victim's charity or whatever. So you'd go work for Serco, but in the Serco penal division. But they can't exactly threaten you like carrot and stick here that if you don't, they'll put you in jail because apparently there's no jail anymore.
No jail.
Yeah. You're like, everyone knows the jail. It's like, how many people can you fit inside a Volkswagen? It's like, well, we fit the maximum amount because someone tried to put one more person and they all died. There's this rotting mass of flesh in a Volkswagen, and we all know the answer. And exactly, And so it's like, what they have that, but for jail. So what can they threaten you with?
Well, the thing is, I was doing blags for years, and then I got caught, but there was no room in jail, so now I'm an Ofsted inspector. Which is ironic, really, because I never finished school. It's sort of part of the reason now I got turned onto a path of crime, really. A lot of it is about social disadvantage. And ironically, I've now found myself in a position where I can combat that social disadvantage, but as a slave.
Yeah, this is the council ironic punishments division.
Being seconded into the police. It's like the Suicide Squad.
Yeah, so, well, this is the Suicide Squad of doing things like filling up potholes and cleaning bins.
The fly tippers are all being arrested by Keir Starmer's drones and they're being forced to be bin men. It's like fucking Jigsaw.
Do you want to play a game?
Do you see the letter picker in the room with you?
there's like lots going on in sort of in UK crime and justice, obviously, right? Like there's a huge amount of, again, a lot of chickens being heightened specifically because like the thing that they used to do to try to paper over that crack, which is jail everybody, is no longer working. And they're having to, again, much like sort of Labour is having to do with its like electoral strategy, basically, they're having to rapidly paper over cracks by just sort of throwing up whatever ideas they have and seeing what works. I mean, these are the same people who are like, I don't know, what if we go back to chemically castrating?
I was going to say, wasn't Shabana Mahmood also publishing another right-wing op-ed recently saying that sex offenders are going to be chemically castrated?
Yeah. So,
but here's the problem. Chemical castration drugs cost money, so we need to get people in local councils to make them free.
The issue is going to be like, you're going to end up getting people who are arrested for noncing, and they're just going to kick each other in the dick until it stops working.
Find the biggest waster in the local council and figure out what amount of nos charges you need to never get an erection again, and that's going to be the penalty.
The noncer games.
Yeah,
like one nonce is allowed to live.
Yeah.
Like
Anyway.
the Labour Party simply cannot stop thinking about other people's junk. Like it doesn't matter who. They're just like, is there a way we can bring genitals into this? I'm begging.
We got to do it.
Yeah.
Anyway. But ultimately, this goes back to like this thing that Labour has done again and again and again, which is trying to paper over cracks in local service provision by being like, let's just use people from the town, maybe.
Or in this case, people not from the town, people from the jail in the country.
Yeah, they were like, what if we let personal trainers prescribe some antibiotics? What if we let, just...
To be fair, personal trainers are dying to do that.
Oh my God, they would love that. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
But it's that just with a punishment angle. It's the same thing of just like, we have to keep papering over these cracks, but the paper's getting expensive.
Yeah, they should make the prisoners personal trainers. That'd be great.
Charlie Bronson, personal trainer,
you'd get so fit.
You'd be motivated.
Yeah. Is it necessary for me to be naked and greasy? Yeah, it's part of the integrity of the process.
It's like you're doing setups and he's just got a fist cocked back at you. You're just like, I gotta keep going.
He's holding a screwdriver to the back of your neck so you don't go down too far.
It's just to motivate you, son. You're gonna get abs like me, and you'll be beating prison guards senseless in no time.
If you don't work on your forearms, how are you going to get delicate brush strokes into your artwork, which you also do? How are you going to convey your complex emotions about spending a whole life in prison?
I think we need to clarify for American listeners, number one, this would be a great Britanology, just a tip for you guys. That we're talking about a famous British criminal who's famous for being a criminal, who took the name Charles Bronson, who just loves fighting and violence and is spending his entire life in prison because he refuses to stop punching everybody he sees.
Yeah, and he also sort of refuses to like get parole.
Yeah,
they're like trying to release him, and he's like,
no,
like it here.
Yeah, he's like, I love jail.
Yeah,
he's the perfect citizen of a labor right.
I will say also that this posits a very alternate ending to a British version of the Shawshank Redemption, where the guy's just like, no, I don't feel like leaving jail. I get to punch way more people here. It's like,
no, it's that he tunneled into the walls, but not so he could escape, just so he could get into like the ceiling panels and then drop down on the guards who were investigating the hole.
I'm the only greased up man in Shawshank.
Now, it's time to talk Crusades. We have been sort of grabbed from the land by our Lord, told to outfit ourselves with a sort of triangular shield, longsword, and more importantly, a spear. One of us can afford a horse, and we're going to get on a ship, go to the Holy Land, and we're going to die en route.
That's right.
That's the plan.
Beautiful.
I'm really excited about it.
The Podcasters Crusade.
Yes.
Yeah, it's an interesting one, right? Because, of course, being a medieval historian is kind of like a form of purgatory at all times, because you devote yourself to this 1,000 years of history, and everyone doesn't want to think about it at all, but they want to repurpose it all the time. And I don't know if you guys have noticed this, but Crusader imagery and Crusade stuff is like back in a big way at the moment.
Yeah.
Okay.
Especially in the Department of Defense in the United States.
Yeah. Hegseth has some questionable tattoos that are Crusader in origin. Yeah.
I was to throw this out that, I mean, obviously this did become a thing to some extent with the start, post 9/11 wars. But I think what's interesting is that, like, I don't really recall, and I could be wrong here, it having the kind of like right-wing chud culture warrior sort of cachet as directed towards domestic politics in America, for example. And now it definitely does. Like, you had the weird LARPer, I'm a Crusader guys with, Deus Vult shit because of the wars in Iraq and Afghanistan, but you didn't have the sort of like weird kind of trad wife influencer crusader imagery amalgamation that you see now.
Yeah.
That's new, and it's weird because it feels like one follows from the other. Thus, it did kind of start quite a while ago, but it's just suddenly gotten way weirder.
Yeah, I think that you're bang on here, Nate, because what used to happen was there was this like ironic detachment, you know, like, oh, actually, I simply love to get sent to a meat grinder in Baghdad because like Deus Vult something. And it was like, that was all fine because it was external, right? You know, the immortal enemy and trying to kind of like push forward this idea that Christianity and Islam have always been at war with each other, right? Which is like this very adorable understanding of the Crusades. And, you know, as we go into in some length in our new Crusades project, like completely untrue. The Seljuks are like, what? Who? I don't. Who is this guy?
Wait, the Franks?
Like what?
Those guys? Yeah, I mean, yeah. What if a Middle Eastern guy was French? Can you imagine?
I mean, yeah. This is like, what if a Swedish guy was French and then became a Middle Eastern guy, right?
Yeah.
Like that's So
ultimately, right? I think what we're getting at is there is a very convenient reading of that history that is as much about internal French politics or internal Frankish politics as it was about like Christendom as some kind of idea and Islam as some kind of idea. It's so much more complicated, and yet, and one of the reasons I think that it become so endemic in the modern right is that this was always the preserve of online weirdos.
Yeah.
It's that online weirdos were always the foot soldiers, and now the online weirdos are the generals. I mean, the way I understand sort of Trumpism generally, and you know that also includes like, you know, reform as well over here, is that these are influencer projects and the influencers are now in charge.
yeah, quite so. And it's very striking because, you know, the influencers are, you know, as you sort of mentioned briefly as well, Nate, there is this whole kind of like a trad thing happening around that, which so it therefore kind of makes sense that they're glomming on to Crusade stuff. And to be fair to them, I mean, thinking about the Crusades and jacking off about the Crusades and pretending that you're going to go on Crusade, this is a very time-honored tradition, right? Like that, the number one thing about the Crusades is actually not going on Crusade, but being like, oh yeah, man, someday, right? Like I'm thinking about it right now, you know, and
I've been sold a Destrier at 29.9 APR by Jakob Fugger.
But also like, because so much of the art even that you wind up seeing kind of as like representations of heroic Crusader actions, like if it was actually art from the era of the Crusades, it would look like weird outsider art on scrap paper because the art styles and the materials were very, very different at the time. It's mostly like nostalgic, weird, retroactive historiography stuff from like the 19th century when like French artists getting really in their feelings about this war that happened in 1870, decided to start painting paintings of the Franks. Like so much of it has always been retrospective and kind of like accumulated weird nostalgia and projection. And now it's just like, I don't know, it feels like a new version of that.
yeah, I think that we're very much experiencing something akin to what was going on in the 19th century when there was this intense nostalgia for the Middle Ages. And, you know, 19th century medieval nostalgia is really predicated by advances in, you know, in industry, essentially. So it's like, oh yeah, we're looking back to the Middle Ages when things were bucolic and people really were all very good Christians and we all lived in the countryside and wasn't it all very nice for all of us?
It's basically the same thing as the people getting like the soap ads from the 1950s and being like, this is what they took from you.
Exactly, 100%, right? And so I think that because we're undergoing this other and stupider kind of technological change at the moment, that's making people go back to the Middle Ages again. And the trouble with the Middle Ages and why it's so possible to just completely misinterpret the Crusades and do all this kind of weird stuff about it is because they don't fucking know what they're talking about because nobody learns about the Middle Ages, right? So they're like, yeah, man, the Crusades, that was like awesome. And I presume it went really well. Anyway, hey ho, right? Which is, you know, the project that I've just kind of done with the guys from American Prestige, we're looking very specifically at the First Crusade, which is like the successful one, right? Quote unquote.
And that was in the 11th century, wasn't it? Like, yeah, it was really early.
Yeah, super early. And it's the one that...
before woke.
Yeah, exactly. It's the one that theoretically succeeds, right? But it succeeds because the people in the Middle East did not expect a bunch of like quirked up white boys to be in their backyard, right? Like it was a failure on other accounts though, right? Because like if you asked Byzantium, they'd be like, this was a dismal failure. We tried to get these French guys to like come help us out and they stole all our land, right? So like from a Byzantine Byzantine perspective, miserable failure. Most people just died in a ditch of dysentery. Like hundreds of them just kind of like rot in the sun because they're wearing plate mail and they just like absolutely cack it. There were people starving everywhere. It's just like an absolute disaster. And they kind of like trip over their dicks and land in Jerusalem and manage to take it for like 5 seconds. But then turns out everyone fucking hates them. It's a long way from France, and like the entire thing just completely collapses, and then you have to have several more crusades over the course of time trying to retake it, right? But none of that matters to these people because they don't actually know about it, right? They just know that there were some kings of Jerusalem vaguely for a point in time, and so therefore they're like, oh yeah, this is something that
is sick as fuck. Edward Norton wore cool ass armor. All right, let's not talk about leprosy, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, exactly. And so it becomes this really kind of like useful rallying cry where you can imagine these things. But what is kind of less clear to me, even though they're talking about this a lot, is what they exactly mean by that, right? Because you have idiots like, Britain First, who still exists somehow, right? So like they were out here tweeting about like crusades in Birmingham the other week, and they're like holding big crosses, and I'm like, I'm sorry, you're going to have a Pope-led ride on Birmingham? And this is the thing that
the American Pope is going to ride on Birmingham. What's so complicated?
They're doing a Maoist standard English version where it's the Crusade. And that's why they need that big cross.
But also it's like, I feel like sometimes this stuff winds up getting repurposed where the Crusader imagery then also gets turned around to be like Charles Martel at the Battle of Poitiers, and also winds up becoming like the Ottoman Habsburg Wars and the Gates of Vienna and stuff. And it's like, I think, at its core, a lot of it's just Islamophobic, but then it also kind of seems to imply too that they're like, but the internal enemy is also the Saracen. There's a Salahuddin in every school board preaching woke DEI, and so it's like it just becomes so confused because like I think to me it's the iconography of like, well, the knights had swords and big shields and rode big horses and apparently did heroic feats.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, for so long, this is, I think, an oft-quoted, Walter Benjamin line, fascism is the addition of the aesthetic to politics. And if you are a sort of, hyper-alienated suburbanite because this is what I always go back to as like, the main, one of the people who are like the political drivers now are how hyper-alienated suburbanites who consume media all the time and consume largely the same and similar media and are just being agitated by the same people thinking in the same ways. What are they going to do? I mean, look, we also know that the hyper-alienated suburbanite tends towards falling down, but very few of them have the like courage of their convictions that Michael Douglas had in that movie to actually go out and be the change he wanted to see in the world.
But then like 5% of them listen to Trash Future though, so you know what? Like they do good falling down. They do nice good falling down. Dog Day Afternoon.
Yeah, that's correct. Yeah.
We need you guys to be Peckinpah.
Not everyone has a Unabomb in them,
So the thing about the Crusades, why it's sort of so attractive to these people, and why you also see it's like now it's the influencers who are in charge, this stuff becomes much, much more apparent at the higher levels of power, is that that is an exciting aesthetic that most people know about because history is kings and knights and deeds. That's what they, and that's all Crusaders. That's what they would want history to be, is kings, knights, and deeds.
And effectively saying, if I were living in the 11th century, I would totally have been a badass Crusader. Like William of Orange or something, or not William of Orange, but I'm trying to think of like the chanson.
I would have crusaded to end the tyranny of the Jacobites.
I was thinking of La Prise d'Orange. I was thinking of
Jacobeans,
different thing entirely. But it would be very funny if there was like a Napoleonic era weeb for the Crusades who was just like insisted on wearing Crusader armor. But it's like this idea that you would have totally been this person and you want to like live out that fantasy.
It's a version of a superhero that's not soy and lib and Marvel and all this stuff. And it goes back to.
Wait. Riley, are you saying that in the minds of the American suburbanite who's alienated, a Crusader is basically anti-woke Captain America?
Yes, that's exactly what I'm saying.
Captain Jerusalem.
I am. I'm stamping this. I'm using that. I think that's really right, and it's a really kind of useful stand-in for themselves, right? Where they are so convinced that they are somehow the subject of history, right? Like, where it's the thing that drives me the most insane when I'm having to deal with the general public, other than the like people who think that medieval medieval people don't bathe thing. It's the idea that like they're a knight, right? Back in time, I would be a king, I would be a knight, and like I'm one of the important people. Like I'm one of the ones that history is written about. It. It's like, baby, you're not. You're a peasant. 80% of everybody is a peasant, right? And sure, there are peasants who go on crusade. You know,
maybe you're a currency trader. Maybe
could be that you are a leather worker. You know,
if you're a leather worker, count yourself fucking lucky.
You're doing good, right?
Maybe,
you know?
maybe they'd give you an Albert.
Just doing a really bad job of reading and deciding you're going to be a medieval character and not doing the background on it and be like, I'm going to be a noble like William of Norwich. Things are going to go great for me.
It's going to be good. It's going to be so good.
Yeah. If you are renting from a lord who's so absent or drunk that he doesn't put your like rent up, and his sheriffs don't fuck with you when they like trade your corn for your flour, and then your wife starts a sort of prosperous beer brewing business, and then your son is able to like lend a small amount of money to someone else, you have just made your entire fucking bloodline. You were not going to be a knight. That's the best you could hope for.
Spinning the medieval noble character selector wheel again and getting Piers Gaveston again and being like,
every time.
My ass has barely recovered.
Yeah. Anyway, sorry.
Is that the Scott Adams of medieval England?
It is completely this though, right? Where it is quite funny because there is the People's Crusade, right? Especially with the First Crusade, and which is what these people would be on, and yeah, that's the one that like kills all the Jewish people on the way over, and then gets like absolutely fucking destroyed by the Seljuks, right? Like they get to Constantinople, the Greeks are all like, ew, like we did not. This is not what we ordered. Then they just get like shoved out onto the Anatolian Peninsula and all slaughtered, which is 100% what would happen.
Conveniently, we have been developing comically oversized guns. We've just been waiting for something to fire at.
It's just going for it.
Today we've decided to make guns as big as our turbans.
Yeah. Oh, you have the sort of bonds of fealty and competitions to do acts of violence with skill. We have a centralized proto-state that is capable of producing and servicing artillery. Good luck.
It's just
anyway.
The entire thing is like bonkers. But you know, there's also this massive overlap with what I am 100% going to go out on a limb, and I'm going to call the great majority of people who Catholic post adult converts. Okay, you know, and I'm allowed to say this because I'm like culturally Catholic. You know, I did my 16 years of Catholic school, and so I'm allowed to diagnose these people as repugnant. But you know, there were all these ones once Pope Leo got made. There's all these posts that are like, I love the Catholic Church and I will go on crusade right now. I'm ready to like crusade for Pope Leo the 14th. And it's like, I'm sorry, using the Pope from Chicago is going to like call a crusade on what, bitch? Like,
they have to rename Comiskey Park, all right? They need all the faithful to descend on Chicago and rip down the fucked up sign and call it its true name.
So
I mean,
true.
really, what we're getting around, right, is like these kinds of, there has never been a good fascist understanding of history.
No,
ever.
no.
There's never been one. And but also what you don't need a good understanding of history. What you need is a good story. And the idea of, you know, chivalric knights doing brave deeds against a sort of foreign other, and that foreign other, by the way, is still here, but they're no longer elsewhere. The foreign other is among us. And so the crusade must start at home.
Making a crusade logistically much simpler.
That's true.
Yeah. Because there's no transport involved.
Yeah, you don't have to make a deal with Enrico Dandolo, who will ultimately screw with you.
That sounds like a startup guy we would talk about.
Yeah.
I'm doing a crusade, love. I'll be home at 6. Yeah, get a dinner on. No, just doing it around the area.
Yeah. The thing is, after, you know, when there was a huge uptick of crusading imagery in Britain, I'll tell you when, during the post-Southport race riots.
Oh, good.
Right.
Yeah. Good.
But that's what you're talking about, right?
Police arresting anyone carrying a Zweihander. Suspicious.
Yeah. That's, what do you mean? I'm not threatening anybody. I'm just wearing this ringmail shirt and hauberk.
I'm allowed to wear chainmail. It says it there clearly in the Magna Carta. It's in plain Latin.
Thumbs in chainmail.
Yeah.
But
we're having to arm the police with Zweihanders.
In Britain, they have to call like the special Zweihander police who are going to come in those special training.
Yeah.
There's morale among Zweihander police is at an all-time low.
Yeah.
Although, to be fair, a sword, much more of a holdout weapon than like a pistol, than a spear, which would have been more like your long gun. Anyway.
Yeah, I know. I've seen Baz Luhrmann's Romeo and Juliet. I'm tracking everything you're saying.
Yeah. You don't need a spear for home defense. It's not maneuverable.
Most people who own spears are actually injured by those same spears.
Yeah. Oh, my toddler got hold of my spear. It's a nightmare.
Look, I'm not saying we have to ban spears. I'm saying we have to ban. What would the spear version of a bump stock be? Like a sort of like the sort of thing.
Having a really beefy right arm.
Anyway, the whole idea of the Crusade imagery, it's like it's typical for history to be misused in this way, right? The actual history of actual people is never as simple as Christians are over here, Muslims are over here, fight. I mean, I think the Fourth Crusade's a perfect example of that. It's Christians killing Christians because they mismanaged their funds and were manipulated into it by Venetians.
Yeah. Venetians, the secret third gender, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
That's the story of the Fourth Crusade. And so I go back to, it is the last most easy to understand version of there being a specifically anti-Muslim version of a superhero.
Yeah. And it's the one time that you can say that, the war ever, quote unquote, worked. Right. And it's been 1,000 years that they're still trying to like get this one back. Right. And it's really kind of depressing, especially when you see all of these things in conjunction very specifically with like AI generated art, which it always has, and which kind of tells you everything because it's so imaginary that you can't even like these people lack the wherewithal to even go find a fucking medieval image of the Crusade, right? Of which
because
there
if
are
they
many.
saw one, it would just look like a child had drawn someone burned at the stake with like a lot of serene frowns.
Yeah.
Like, those people are frowning a lot considering they're on fire.
Yeah. I hate being on fire.
There's a really good one that I like that comes from one of the medieval paintings of, I think it's actually the siege of Antioch, and they're like saying, oh yeah, they've got like witches on the walls that were like doing dances to try to bewitch the Crusaders, and like the witches are like twerking, they're like shaking their asses, and the knights are like, no, sexy witch, no, like, and it's
I'm just imagining like, yeah, because you see the art of like, when they finally got tired of the the Knights Templars and all the different fucking the Hospitalier and stuff like that. It's like Hugh Dispenser being eviscerated, and the look on his face is like, well, this is a bit inconvenient.
That sucks.
Oh, I need my viscera.
I kind of like that lower intestine, actually.
Yeah. But bringing it back, right? It's a story that's been told for a while, that has become more mainstream. And the reason it's become more mainstream is primarily because if you want to excite people about a politics that punishes your neighbor because he's Muslim, then you really could do worse than the Crusades.
Or does it just feel too gauche to be a weeb for Slobodan Milosevic? I mean, because there is a more contemporary example of this. It just winds up being a lot more obvious what it is.
Yeah.
And I mean, they're also like, that's not to say these aren't people who, will walk around the town singing remove kebab. It's just, you need to be a bit more plugged in to a more complex version of history to like appreciate that source of Islamophobic inspiration.
Exactly. And I mean, I suppose that it's to a certain extent, I'm attempting to kind of like command the tide back here by saying like, why don't we actually like look at the history of this if we're going to go around yelling about it? Because obviously they don't want to do that. They just want to be racist.
Yeah, they're excited about being racist. They don't want to hear that like the county of Tripoli was fucked, or that Acre was like.
Let people enjoy things. Okay, guys, we're so negative. They're really having fun being racist.
Yeah.
Like, it doesn't really matter if it's like not really cool or like doesn't quite make sense.
Or that Acre was only like a square kilometer of Christian control, really.
Yeah, you do it. It's like, granted, I understand that like I'm showing up trying to be like a pedant, and well, actually these people, but I mean also fundamentally like these people are fucking nerds, right? Like, oh yeah, man, you're gonna go do a crusade. That's what you're gonna do, dude. That is like posting AI generated pictures of Baldwin the First. Yeah, absolutely. Like I completely fucking believe this. And
so that's Alex's older brother.
But I mean,
much older brother.
Yeah, well, he didn't know that sword had been sharpened.
it's. Oh, Jesus Christ.
He was handed it by the armor,
Lord.
and he thought it was a play sword. It was a whole, they were doing like a play, and
he was posing for a tapestry.
The other person in the scene had already got their frown practiced, ready to go. Yeah. And then they got to frown for real.
Sorry, please go on, Eleanor.
Oh, no, it's just like one of these things, right? Where I think that this is genuinely a really interesting part of history, but not for the reason that people think that it is. And I suppose that what I'm sort of attempting to do here is like some form of actual public education about what the Crusades are. So at least you can like just be like, shut the fuck up, nerd, when people say things like this to you, which is the only correct, answer to it. And like, granted, it sort of doesn't matter how much actual real history you do because they just don't want to hear it. But I think that it makes it useful because there are so many people out there who think of themselves as like history buffs, she says in like incredibly loose quotations. And
Yeah, like Patrick Wyman.
yeah, this fucking guy. Yeah.
The buffest historian I can think of.
I mean, I think that man can probably bench me. So yeah, like that's what we call history buff, right? So yeah, and so it's like one of these things where at a point in time you do actually have to know about this to tell people to shut the fuck up. And we also need to kind of be looking at these histories because they do get misused in these really terrible ways. But I'm not trying to take these people seriously, but I am trying to kind of like take away their toys a little bit. I just want to give them the spanking that they so are all begging for, right? And then like, send them back home to kind of like go think about that. That's all, right?
Yeah, what we really need to do is have a football chant where to the tune of like Can't Fight the Moonlight, you do like a song about how Boniface I of Montferrat was redirected to sack Byzantium by the Venetians and didn't get to go to the Holy Land at all. How about that?
That's I'm working it up as we speak, Riley. That's fantastic.
That's right. Yeah, we just need more. We need more football chanting about the Crusades.
Yeah.
Anyway, so where can people when this project comes out, where will people be able to find it?
So it's going to be out in mid-June, and you can find it either by following us at We're Not So Different, my lovely little medieval history podcast, or you can check it out over at American Prestige. So it's a fun little crossover that we did. It's 10 episodes. It's a kind of standalone series that we're doing, and I think it's really good, and it was really, really fun to work in depth with Derek, who is, an Islam scholar. So it was nice to kind of like, bring that in and just like nerd the fuck down for hours and hours and hours. But really, really great. If you want to argue more effectively about the Crusades, come check it out.
And this show, you also can get a second episode. We're going to be talking a little bit more in depth about South Africa on Thursday. So Milo, I'm sure, is excited about that.
Let me tell you, it's going to go off.
With Ben Fogel, a historian who is going to be in studio. So
not that Ben Fogel.
No, a different one.
Not the guy who rode across the Atlantic.
No, different guy.
He used to be on the One Show.
No, so we're going to be talking with Ben all about South Africa on the bonus episode, which you can access for now £4.50. We have changed our main currency to pounds due to dollar market volatility.
Let's fucking go.
That's right.
Today's the day Trash Future officially became British.
Yeah. By the way, just so if you're wondering, if you're already subscribed to the Patreon, nothing changes for you.
Yeah.
Right. It's just future people will be paying £4.50 rather than you. So that's the situation.
Don't concern yourself. Also, if you are going to subscribe to the Patreon, do not do it through the Patreon iOS app because you will be charged almost double, and we will get no more money than normal.
If you subscribe to this show through the Patreon iOS app, you are donating money to Tim Cook.
And I really wish you wouldn't.
Sign up through the Patreon web browser version, and you can still listen to it through the Patreon web app if you decide to do so.
Or you can listen to it through the Patreon iOS app. Just don't sign up on it.
Don't do it. Don't do it.
Because otherwise, Apple takes a tithe.
That policy is currently working its way through court right now, as it's been obviously challenged by the FTC.
Yeah, it does seem to be hugely, obviously illegal.
Yes.
But also live shows. Trash Future live show on the 21st of June, and also there's Glue Factory and Lions Led by Donkeys either side of that. You can go to all three in one weekend if you so desire. There's also Trash Future at the Fringe on the 31st of July. Tickets for that are on sale. They're going fast. And I'm going to be in Ireland this week, actually. This week and next.
It's going to come out on Tuesday.
Yeah, so I'm going to be from Friday through to the following Friday of the following week.
I'll be in Ireland. I'll
be Kilkenny, Dublin, Cork, Belfast, and then I've got shows in Bristol, London, also London, 19th of June, Refugee Action live show. Please do buy tickets to that.
Yes.
Christmas Island, Easter Island.
That's right.
Palau, Kiribati.
Norfolk Island.
Paleo.
Yes. All right. I think that's all of the end. That's all of the end matter. The theme music, which I forgot forgotten to say for about
Acre.
3 years. Yeah, he's going to be in the county of Antioch.
Yeah, that's right. The county of Tripoli.
Odessa.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He's gonna be performing for the king in the kingdom of Jerusalem for Crusader action.
Yeah, the Donbass.
All right. Enough of that.
Yeah.
Enough of that. Do I have anything else to say? Yes, the theme song is "Here We Go" by Ginseng. I forgot to say that for the last 3 years.
For like a year, yeah.
Yeah, I should probably mention that more. All right,
Yeah.
see you on the bonus episode, everybody. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.